Welcome to episode 8 of my narrative inquiry. What does it mean to be Acadian? This episode's guest is Hugo Larsson from New Brunswick.
Our guest this evening is Hugo Larsson. Would you care to give us some information on who you are and a little bit about you as a person?
Okay, well, I was born back in 1963 in at the time, the village of Tracadie, up north in the northeast. And but the thing is, my mother and my father, my mother was from Tracadie, my father was from Sweden, and they wound up traveling quite a bit around the world. And since the most common language being used was English at the time, I learned English as a first language, and French was just a few little tidbits here and there that I would hear whenever I was back in Tracadie for whatever period time, temporary period of time I was there. But then when I was in grade two, my father left us, and so my mother had to find a place where she could work. And she was a nurse. They happened to be hiring in Tracadie, so we moved back up there. And Tracadie didn't have any English schools. It still doesn't. So they had to decide, do they bus me all the way to either Bathurst or Miramichi, or do they send me to the local schools and hope for the best? Well, they sent me to the local school, hoped for the best. It took me, let's see, from grade three till about grade five before I felt comfortable enough to speak in French to my schoolmates. And then in grade six, I was speaking with no hesitation to the teachers as well. And from that point on, I was okay. Now that's my childhood. Right now, well, because I know both languages fairly well, I started by studying in translation, then switched to information communication when I was at university, and worked mostly as a reporter for newspapers, although I have worked in radio as well. When those jobs ran out, I decided to go back to translation. I tried to get a job here in Fredericton, and they were hiring. They liked what I could do, so I came down to Fredericton, spent about 5 years as a translator, and then I switched to interpretation, and I've been an interpreter ever since. This would be my 20th year as an interpreter, pretty much.
Wow.
Mhm.
So how long have you been living you're in Fredericton right now?
In Fredericton now. Yeah, I've been
Okay.
here since 2001.
Okay. Um, so it sounds like you have been pretty busy with working in translation and keeping yourself, obviously, I'm assuming translation would be French translation.
Yeah.
So that's really good. Is there anything else that you wanted to share before I move on to the questions?
Um, I don't know. Maybe some of the information will just come out freely and automatically
Yeah.
as your questions come along. If you're going to be editing this anyway, what I could tell you is that some years ago, the thing is, I've married a woman from Grand Falls who happens to have aniridia, and the Grand Falls aniridic people they're the largest family ever studied worldwide. And so, uh, just for fun, I guess, what was fun at the time, we tried to trace where my wife's aniridia came from. Now, aniridia means no color in the eye, no iris. It's just a great big pupil. And we started with her, who got it from her father. Her father got it from his mother. His his mother got it from her mother. Her mother got it from her mother, and I'm trying to remember. Okay, Suzanne, Robert, Émilie, Marceline, Julienne, Perpétue, Geneviève. So we were able to go back 7 generations that way. We were able to confirm Aniridia all the way up to the 6th generation. And after that, we had no way of really knowing because there hadn't been anything written down about them. But the thing is, it got to a couple named Simon Martin and Geneviève Bourgoin. Now, Geneviève Bourgoin was quite obviously from Quebec, but Simon Martin was said to be of Acadian stock, and eventually we found him in the the genealogy series called Histoire des Acadiens or Histoire et généalogie des Acadiens by Bona Arsenault. And at that point, it was like we realized that this was going to be more than just an intellectual interest. This was going to be something that was going to come and get us right here. And so ever since, it's been that was part of. I'd always known about Acadians before because in Tracadie, I mean, it's hard to avoid
Yeah.
the whole Acadian thing. Whereas in Grand Falls, a lot of people tended to think that Acadians only lived on the East Coast and that they were Brayons. So
Yeah.
when I was able to show my wife that there were some Acadian roots to her genealogy, she essentially she was a new convert. Let's put it that way. And me, well, being Acadian, stopped being a simple intellectual interest. It became something that came and got me here.
Yeah. So is that what piqued your interest in Acadian culture?
Well, I've always had a certain interest in Acadian culture, but I wasn't sure it was really truly mine, other than the fact that I'd been raised surrounded by other Acadians. But when I saw that, it suddenly made sense. That's what all of a sudden, instead of telling my kids, you have both Swedish ancestry and Irish ancestry and French ancestry. I told them that they are Swedish, Irish, and Acadian.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think it's really interesting that a lot of folks now are making that distinction between, wanting to identify not just as French, but as also Acadian.
Hmm.
So that kind of brings me to our first question, which is, what does it mean to be Acadian?
I've been thinking about that for quite some time, and one of the big problems with problems. One one of the big difficulties with a question like that is often we will try to define ourselves by what we're not. Like, I'm a Canadian, therefore I don't believe in the Second Amendment. I don't believe in this. I don't believe in that. All sorts of things like that. And so when it comes to Acadian, it's like my first instinct is to talk about how we're different from Quebecers, among other things. But the big difference is Quebecers have a territory, we don't. That's one big difference. But another thing is Acadians really are members of a very large community that have in common a history, certain traditions, certain types of music, certain types of food, things that when we get together and decide to do something Acadian, we usually know what to expect because it's Acadian. I don't know
Mhm.
if that really answers the question.
No, it does. So with that being said, would you feel that feeling or belief is different than what you would have felt in your or thought in your childhood.
Oh, certainly. Well, part of it is until grade 3, I didn't even really know French, they never talked about being Acadian in my immediate family because my father, being Swedish, wasn't all that interested in the Acadian fact anyway, and my mother, for some reason, wasn't all that interested either, even though she was quite aware of being Irish on her father's side and Acadian on her mother's side. But for some reason, it was never of big interest to her. Uh, I'm sorry, what was the question again?
So is it different than what you would have believed in your childhood, what it means to be Acadian?
Oh yeah. When I was growing up from grade 3 on, I was learning French. I knew French fully by the time I was in grade 7, and the first time the actual subject ever came up, I'd say, was in grade 10 history, and they talked about uh, the Canadiens français, les nouveaux français, being along the St. Lawrence River, whereas we were in the Maritimes, mostly in Nova Scotia to start with, but then, with the deportation and everything else, we wound up scattering, and in our case, we wound up in Tracadie. So, but the thing is, my mother didn't find it all that important. I still absorbed what the teachers were telling us at school, and I certainly found the subject interesting, but I never really brought it up with my mother because I don't know, there was something about it that she seemed to be resistant to the idea, and I don't know why. To this day, I don't know why, but that's what it was. But eventually, I went to university, met my wife, we married, had a first child, and during that time, just for the fun of it, we had tried to do the genealogical research I was telling you about, and at that point, we found out that she definitely had Acadian roots. So after that, I tried to see what I could find out about my own roots, and I was able to find a book on les Robichaux. And from that point on, uh, learning more about where I was from made me understand possibly a little bit where I was going.
Yeah, that's definitely a thought I think few of us have had.
Hmm.
Um, so here's a question for you. I'm interested to see your response. Having learned French at a bit of a, well, I was going to say later age, but I guess it wasn't, what would you call that, mid-childhood?
I guess you could call it mid-childhood. It started in grade 3.
Yeah, so are English Acadians less Acadian due to assimilation? And if so, could you please explain?
Okay, can you say that again?
Are English Acadians less
Hmm.
Acadian due to
Oh,
assimilation?
um, I'm really of two minds when it comes to that. Uh, in my mind, my personal mind, I don't see how you can truly be Acadian if you haven't learned the language, eaten the same food, sang the same songs, and truly lived with a community of Acadians. So, in my opinion, if you really want to be Acadian, you have to have been raised in the Acadian community. But I understand also people who have come to the realization that they have Acadian roots, and I wouldn't want to deny them their inclusion in our greater Acadian community. I think it's great that we have people like that, but certainly there are things that I will understand about being Acadian that people who have never grown up in that type of community will never experience.
Yeah. So not an official question, but kind of prompted based off of what you said. So you feel that living in the Acadian culture is a big factor. Do you think people who move into an Acadian community can therefore, after adopting the culture, do they become Acadian, or is it not possible because they don't have the ancestry?
Well, no, that's pretty much well, no, no, it's true. I have some roots, but I mean, I know of people who moved to Tracadie, and I mean, I mean, I don't know them. I know their descendants, but there are people in Tracadie. There were Youngs, there were McLaughlins, there were McGraws and Fergusons, and other people who moved to Tracadie, and instead of imposing English on the rest of the community, they assimilated into the community. Maybe not the first generation, but certainly the second one, and then the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. So yeah, you don't have to have Acadian roots necessarily. You can simply uh, be an adopted Acadian, or you adopt yourself sort of to into the community.
Okay. Yeah, I brought it up because I've had a few people who have had the similar feeling, right? So I'm wondering now if I should start including it in my questions because it seems to be coming up as a commonality.
Mm.
Um, so do you feel that you had fewer opportunities as an Acadian?
Fewer opportunities. I don't think so. I I don't think being Acadian has ever held me back for anything. The only uh, the only thing that comes to mind was if I were to go to try to get a job in an English place, they might wonder, yeah, well, do you really know English well enough? And I would wonder because I'd spent all those years learning French. And so, of course, my English would take a back seat for a while. But I mean, that was a long time ago, and really, it hasn't been a problem in decades.
Mm,
Mm.
that's good. Um, So this next question is related kind of to the first one. Did you have fewer opportunities due to language barriers?
I don't think so because my mother made sure I never lost my English, and the French just came naturally, uh, not just through French, but through minor hockey, minor baseball, and just getting together with the kids in the neighborhood and learning what they called whatever it is they had. Uh, in my case, I might have thought a ball to start with, but they would call it a ballon. Well, that was easy to learn, a ballon. And instead of calling the baseball bat a bâton, they called it un bat. Well, easy for me, bat. That's easy enough.
Mhm.
Uh, a lot of the stuff I learned actually was watching some sports on French TV. In Tracadie way back then, we had exactly two channels: the English channel and the French channel. And
Yeah,
so every once in a while, there was absolutely nothing good on the English channel, so I'd look on the French channel, and sometimes they'd have a hockey game or a baseball game, so I'd watch that.
yeah, yeah. Growing up, I was lucky we had 5 channels. We upgraded.
Uh, but how many were duplicates?
Actually, there were no duplicates.
Oh,
We had a couple of English channels. We had CTV, Global, CBC, at TVA, and maybe, I don't know what, but another French one.
Okay, because see, when I was growing up in Tracadie, we had CSU TV, which was affiliated with CBC, with Radio Canada at the time, and we had Channel 12, which was a mixture of CBC and CTV. If Global existed at the time, I never heard about it.
No, Globe, we just came across it one day by accident because it was all the way up in the 40s.
Okay.
So goodness knows how long it was there. We didn't know it was a discovery one day. So
Mm.
yeah, but yeah, I understand what it was like watching French TV. Sometimes there was nothing good on. I watched a lot of French cartoons because
Hmm.
that was one of the consistent things. The French channel always seemed to have good cartoons. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. When they stopped showing them in English, you could count on them being in French for years and years to come.
yeah. Um, Definitely watched a lot of French shows growing up. Um, Being in Tracadie growing up and only having one French channel, just out of curiosity, what were the types of shows that you would have watched other than the sports?
Okay, well, certainly there were cartoons on Saturdays, and there were cartoons on Sundays as well in French. We didn't see any cartoons in English on Sundays, but in French there was Le Roi Leo and Le Prince Saphir. I don't know if they ring a bell to you.
Yeah, sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, eventually they came up with other. They were often Japanese cartoons that were translated into French. There was I think his name was Demetan, the frog, who would always be
Okay.
playing his flute. Do 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 do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember those. And of course, at 5 o'clock, they had shows such as Maigrichon et Gras Double, Picotine, and of course, there was Bobino and all of his little 5-minute featurettes. Yeah, Bobino and his sister Bobinette, who was a puppet, but they
Yeah.
were brother and sister apparently.
Yeah. Uh, so just getting back to the questions here, what do you feel, what was your biggest challenge or has been your biggest challenge so far as an Acadian?
My biggest challenge. Hmm. I don't know if I don't know if being Acadian is a challenge in itself. Thing is that for the first years I grew up in an Acadian community, so it was never a problem. It was more a matter of convincing the people over there that I was no longer just le petit anglais. I was not just the new kid in town who couldn't speak French. Eventually, I learned French and I could speak French with everybody, so that wasn't a problem. After that, let's see, we moved to Moncton for my studies, and on campus there was no problem. Off campus, well, when it came to doing your shopping, it was hit and miss. Sometimes they could serve you in French, sometimes they couldn't, or wouldn't, depending on the case.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes it could be a challenge trying to find a job in the area, but I don't think that being Acadian had anything to do with it. I think it was more a fact that back in 1985, 86, 87, there just weren't jobs to be had. Our cohort, when they graduated that year, they wound up in a period of time where jobs simply were super, super, super hard to find. But I don't think being Acadian was a excuse me, was a problem when it came to that.
Yeah. So it was more or less just due to the economy, not so much anything else. Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh,
Like when you're thinking challenge, what did you have in mind?
um, I've had some people tell me that they've had challenges due to language issues, like maybe not being able to pursue the higher education they wanted because it wasn't offered in the language they wanted to take it in, or having to move out of their community to find work, or um, maybe I've had someone tell me stories related to the workplace and the way people treated them due to where they were from, some things like that.
Okay, well, first of all, um, I had studied in translating and then information communication. So language wasn't really a problem for me since I knew both languages quite well. However, something interesting that came up as you mentioned that, I remember when I was working for, at the time it was called Cable Service Limited, then it was sold to Fundy Cable, and now it's part of the Rogers Empire, et cetera, et cetera. But at the time, it was simply called Cable Service Limited, and we had not one local access channel, but two. One was in English and one was in French. And I, of course, did most of my work on the French side, but the people on the English side came to know me quite well. So every once in a while, the the French would say something about their fellow English workers, and they would say like, "Ah, les maudits Anglais, damn those English people, I can't stand them." They would say something like that openly, and I didn't say anything, but anyway, I let it pass. Then every once in a while, I would hear somebody who really had something against someone from the French side, and he'd say something like, "Oh, them fucking frogs." So I didn't have the self-confidence I have now to like say, "Don't call them that." I just sort of cringed and walked away.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it puts you in an awkward situation as well, especially where you're, technically you could be identifying with either side.
Well,
So,
that's just it. Both wanted me.
yeah, yeah. But that sounds like a different story from your childhood, from where you were talking about how you were in the French community and you were the petit anglais, right? So it sounds
Hmm.
like things have um that has changed.
Yeah.
So
Well, I often tell people that when it came to learning French, I could either sink or swim. And luckily enough, I learned to swim.
yeah. So actually going back to the statement you had made about being the petit anglais, when you were living, did you ever live in a English community other than Fredericton after leaving Tracadie?
After leaving Tracadie, well, I lived in Moncton, but I mean, there were some French parts and some English parts, so it
Yeah.
uh,
So did you
it
identify?
was more English than French. But I mean, what can I say? But after
Yeah.
that, I moved to Grand Falls, which is where my wife is from. And while there, I'd heard stories the whole time I was at university about how Grand Falls was bilingual. Everybody there was bilingual. Everybody there could speak both languages, and they could serve people in both languages. And Grand Falls was the perfect little community because of that. Now, after living in Grand Falls, I found out that actually Grand Falls, as it is today, is much more French than it ever was in the past. But the French do speak English. On the other hand, there were some English people, and I remember this because I was working for the newspaper in Grand Falls. There were these people who were taking um, literacy classes, adult literacy classes at the local community college. And it was a French community college because in New Brunswick, the community colleges have the same type of duality division that the schools do. There's a French there are French schools and there are English schools, and neither shall the twain meet. Same thing for the colleges. NBCC was English, CCNB was French, and the satellite campus we had in Grand Falls was CCNB. But the thing is, they had made an exception so that some English people from the Grand Falls area could come and learn and brush up on their literacy and hopefully get out of there with the equivalent of a grade 12 diploma and then hopefully move on to bigger and better things. But I remember being at and I don't want to spill anything that I'm not supposed to because there are things that were said that I really shouldn't be well, let's just say that there were some English people who would say things like, look, if I just want to flip burgers, why do I have to know French? And the idea that they might be asked every once in a while to come to the counter and serve customers for some reason never seemed to occur to them. They figured they could just stay in the back, flip burgers, and that would be it.
Yeah. But I know that a few years ago, as you had mentioned, there was a lot of adult literacy classes that were going on across the province, and they were offering a lot of incentive for folks to become bilingual. So that was, I don't know how successful it was, but I know it for a time it was really doing really, it was an initiative anyway. So yeah. And
Oh, you just went white. Oh, you're back.
I'm back. A glitch in the matrix. But with that being said, I think it's probably time to wrap it up. I can hear my kid crying. He's supposed to be in bed, so I should probably let you go.
Okay. Well,
All
if you ever
right.
want to pick up from here, just give me a call.
Yeah, well, that was actually my last question, was what was your biggest challenge as an Acadian? So you've made it through.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
So
and
thank you
hopefully
so
actually,
much.
and hopefully I actually answered the question because
Yes, you did. You
that
definitely
is
did.
quite a difficult question to answer.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I'll keep you posted on what I do with the results.